Welcome to this deep dive, tailored just for you, the learner. Today we're diving into something I think many of us grapple with. Those moments where we catch ourselves, echoing patterns from our childhood, especially the things we absolutely swore we'd do differently.
Exactly. And we're going to explore not just why these repetitions happen, but also something really important. How just becoming aware, just noticing them, can be that first powerful step towards real change.
Yeah, think about that moment. Maybe you hear your own parents' sharp tone coming out of your mouth when you're talking to your kids.
Mhm.
Or maybe it's that feeling, that urge to just shut down, withdraw when things get tense, just like maybe your father did or your mother.
That sudden jolt of recognition.
Yes, that, wait a minute, this isn't me, I didn't want to be this. This deep dive is really about trying to untangle why these echoes, these sort of time-folding moments happen.
It's such a human thing. You might, hear yourself criticizing someone and suddenly think, wow, that sounded just like my mother.
Or find yourself in a conflict, maybe with a partner, and you just default automatically to a way of handling it you saw growing up, even if part of you knows it's not really working now.
Right. Even if you consciously know better.
And it brings up this fascinating puzzle about family patterns, doesn't it? How we can end up becoming the very things we resisted most.
It's not because we're broken or flawed. It's more about how deeply these ways of being get ingrained, like a language we learned before we even had words for it.
An invisible script.
Exactly, an invisible script that sort of runs in the background, influencing our relationships, how we react to stress, how we show love, how we try to protect ourselves.
And in Gestalt therapy, there's this idea that connects to this repetition, right? Something called unfinished situations. Could you unpack that a little?
Oh, sure. Imagine an unresolved emotional experience from your past. Because like a notification that keeps popping up on your internal screen. It hasn't been fully dealt with, so it keeps demanding energy, keeps influencing how you see and react to things now, even if you're not consciously thinking about that old experience.
Okay, that makes sense. The material we looked at gives this really vivid example with Sarah. She sounds completely exhausted, just fighting herself all the time,
Yes.
snapping in anger, just like her mother used to, and then being just overwhelmed with shame right after.
Sarah's story really captures that internal conflict, that feeling of, this isn't who I want to be, right after she's done the very thing she hates. It's that feeling of being almost powerless in the moment.
And she grew up with her mother's anger being, unpredictable. It created this constant tension. So Sarah's deepest desire, her vow really, was to create a calm, peaceful home, the opposite of what she knew.
And that connection is key. Her intense reactions as an adult may be over something seemingly small, like her son making a mess. It wasn't just about the mess. It was like a trigger. It unlocked all that stored up feeling from childhood, feeling small, unheard, maybe scared. She was essentially projecting those old, unfinished feelings onto the present situation.
Wow. It really makes you pause and think about your own life, doesn't it, the learner? Have you had those moments, suddenly realizing you're acting just like a parent in a way you swore you wouldn't?
Maybe it's withdrawing emotionally when things get tough, just like you saw growing up.
Or maybe repeating relationship dynamics that you observed, even if you knew consciously they weren't healthy models.
Yeah, take a moment, the learner. Can you identify any of those echoes, those repeated ways of being? They often stem right from that unfinished business. Lessons learned too young, coping mechanisms that maybe worked then, but now they get in the way.
And the really tricky part is that internal battle. You want to change, you see the pattern, you hate it even, but there's this pull, this almost automatic default back to it.
Yes. It's like consciously you want something different, but another part of you clings to the old way because, it's familiar.
Familiar feels safe, even if it's destructive.
In a strange way, yes. It's the map, even if it leads somewhere you don't want to go. It's what helped you survive originally.
Because as kids, we adapt, right? We learn to read the room, anticipate moods, figure out the family system to navigate it.
Precisely. Those childhood adaptations, those survival skills, they become second nature. You learn to pick up on unspoken things, you learn to brace yourself, but those skills, honed for survival then, can become real limitations later.
How so?
They can impact our adult relationships, how we handle work stress, how we parent, even just setting simple boundaries. What kept us safe then can keep us stuck now.
The material also mentions Mark. He found himself repeating his father's pattern, burying himself in work when things got stressful at home.
Mark's story is another great illustration. He saw his father use work as a refuge, a way to avoid, difficult feelings or conflict. And Mark initially saw that as dedication, maybe even strength.
Right. He admired it at first.
But then he realized he was doing the exact same thing, using work to sidestep emotional discomfort in his own life, with his own family.
And it probably felt productive, kept him busy, avoided those awkward conversations, those messy feelings. But underneath,
He started feeling that cost,
yeah,
that disconnection, first from his loved ones, and then eventually he realized he was disconnected from himself too. He was living out a pattern he hadn't consciously chosen. It was inherited.
And layered on top of all this is the weight of those promises we make to ourselves as kids, isn't it? I'll never be like that. And then the disappointment, the self-blame, when we find ourselves doing exactly that.
Oh, absolutely. That vow to do better and the sting when we break it.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. Just deciding to be different isn't usually enough.
Why not?
Because it's not just a decision. It's about untangling this whole complex web. Beliefs we absorbed, emotions we learn to suppress or manage in certain ways, even how our bodies learn to react.
So breaking free means facing things we've maybe pushed away, like anger or sadness or fear.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It often involves having the courage to look at those parts of ourselves we've disowned or try to keep hidden. The anger, the sadness, the fear, whatever it is for you. And the starting point isn't blame. It's actually recognition, curiosity, and maybe a bit of compassion for yourself.
Seeing these behaviors not as me being bad, but as old strategies.
Outdated coping strategies, that's a
Yeah.
great way to put it. Strategies that helped you navigate your world back then. Seeing it that way really shifts the perspective, doesn't it?
It does. It feels less like a life sentence.
Right. So moving beyond just what we do, the focus shifts to how it feels when we're in that pattern. This idea of phenomenological awareness.
Phenomenological awareness, so tuning into the actual experience in the moment.
Yes. Paying attention to what's happening right now, the sensations in your body, the feelings bubbling up, without immediately judging them or trying to figure them out, just noticing, experiencing the pattern as it unfolds inside you.
Okay. And to understand that unfolding, the Gestalt cycle of experience can be helpful. Can you walk us through that?
Think of it as a natural flow. Starts with a sensation, maybe a tightness in your chest, then awareness, oh, I'm feeling tense. Then energy mobilizes, you feel an urge to act. Then action, you speak up or maybe withdraw. And finally, closure, a sense of completion, resolution.
And unfinished business is when that cycle gets broken somewhere.
Exactly. If any part of that cycle gets blocked or interrupted, maybe you feel the sensation, but don't let yourself become fully aware of the feeling, or you don't take the needed action. Then it remains incomplete. And that incompletion colors future experiences.
Like with Sarah, she feels the frustration, the sensation, but maybe jumps straight to yelling the action without fully acknowledging the feeling first.
That's a perfect example. The awareness piece might get skipped. Or maybe after the yelling, the shame prevents real closure. So the cycle is incomplete and it tends to repeat. Understanding how and why we get stuck in that loop is crucial. Awareness of the whole cycle is key.
And we develop ways to avoid completing the cycle, don't we? These avoidance mechanisms.
Yes. Those strategies we learned, often in childhood, to protect ourselves from difficult feelings. But as adults, they become barriers. Think about Mark again.
His workaholism.
Right. That tendency to dive into work was an avoidance mechanism. Learned, probably, from watching his father manage stress that way. He absorbed it.
So he didn't consciously decide, I'll avoid feelings by working.
Likely not. In Gestalt terms, we might call this introjection. You swallow whole someone else's way of being, their beliefs or behaviors, without really chewing on it, without integrating it consciously. Mark adopted his father's avoidance strategy. To change, he needs to face what he's avoiding.
Which for him was vulnerability, connection.
Yes, probably the discomfort of feeling vulnerable, of needing connection, instead of just retreating into the safety of work. Staying present with the discomfort rather than escaping.
It's amazing how much the body remembers all this. You mentioned sensations. The material talks about emotions being stored physically, tension, heaviness.
Oh, absolutely. The body keeps score, as they say. Those knots in your shoulders, that tightness in your gut, they aren't random. They're often the physical residue of past emotional experiences held in our nervous system. Think about Sarah again. You mentioned the heat rising. Her fists clenching before she yelled.
Yeah. So those weren't just physical things.
They were physical clues, linked directly back to how she felt as a child facing her mother's anger. Maybe helpless, maybe scared, maybe furious, but unable to express it. Her body remembered that feeling.
Wow. So paying attention to the body is really important.
Immensely. Practices like just scanning your body, noticing sensations, grounding yourself in the present moment, they help you reconnect with that physical wisdom. Asking yourself gently, what does this feeling remind me of?
Or what is my body trying to tell me right now?
Exactly. If this tightness could speak, what would it say? Think about Mark's racing heart, his tight shoulders, that empty feeling when stressed. Those are all signals pointing towards unmet needs or unresolved feelings.
And sometimes we don't just feel things ourselves, we kind of put them onto others. Projection.
Yes, projection is another fascinating defense mechanism. We take qualities or feelings in ourselves that we find unacceptable, things we don't want to own, and we see them in other people instead.
So Sarah judging her son's messiness, could that partly be about her own feelings of being overwhelmed or out of control?
It's possible. Or Mark, accusing his wife of being distant, might actually mask his own fear of closeness, his own tendency to withdraw. We see out there what we can't face in here.
This sounds related to the idea of the shadow, the parts of ourselves we keep hidden, even from ourselves.
Very much so. The shadow contains all those aspects we've disowned, maybe anger, vulnerability, neediness, ambition. Things we learned weren't okay, but they don't go away. They operate unconsciously, influencing us. The work isn't to get rid of the shadow, but to bring its contents into the light, to integrate them.
So Sarah might need to explore the anger she's always tried to be calm over, and Mark, maybe the neediness hidden beneath his self-reliance.
Precisely. Acknowledging and finding healthy ways to express or integrate those hidden parts is key to becoming more whole and less controlled by them.
Okay, another concept that seems important here is contact, and how resistance gets in the way.
Right. Contact is about the quality of our presence, our engagement with what's happening right now within ourselves and between ourselves and others. Are we fully here? Resistance is anything we do to avoid that full contact, to avoid being truly present with our experience.
And in these family patterns, resistance is often about avoiding difficult feelings.
Exactly. Sarah resisting feeling her anger fully. Mark resisting feeling vulnerable. It's self-protection, but it's the very thing that keeps the pattern going.
That's the paradox again, isn't it? Avoiding the feeling keeps you stuck in the behavior.
It really is. The avoidance perpetuates the cycle. So the antidote, in a sense, is presence. Learning to stay with whatever is arising thoughts, feelings, sensations, without immediately needing to fix it, change it, or run away from it. Just being with it.
So for Sarah, maybe after an outburst, instead of just drowning in shame, she could try to just sit with the feelings underneath the anger. Notice them.
Yes. Or for Mark, instead of letting his mind drift to work emails during a conversation, really bringing his full attention to his wife, even if the conversation feels difficult.
That sounds simple, but probably really hard in practice.
It takes practice, but presence transforms our relationship to discomfort. It allows us to move from automatic reaction driven by the past pattern to conscious response grounded in the present moment.
Which brings us to another paradox, the paradox of change. You mentioned it's not about rejecting the past.
Right. True. Lasting change often comes not from fighting against our history, but from finding a way to accept its truth, to understand its impact, without necessarily condoning any harm. It's about making peace with what was, so it doesn't unconsciously run the show anymore.
So Sarah doesn't have to forget her mother's anger, but she can understand how it shaped her and then choose differently for herself now.
Precisely. Honoring her experience while creating her own identity. And Mark can acknowledge his father's pattern, maybe even understand why his father did it without feeling destined to repeat it.
That takes courage, though. Facing those ignored parts, stepping into the uncertainty of doing things differently.
It absolutely takes courage, but on the other side of that fear is freedom. The freedom to actually choose who you want to be, moment by moment, rather than just reacting based on old programming.
And there's often a turning point, right? A moment of realization that allows for completing the unfinished.
Yes, that moment of deeper insight can be incredibly powerful. For Sarah, maybe it was truly getting, deep down, that her anger wasn't just about the present trigger, but about that old feeling of being unseen, powerless. That understanding can lead towards closure.
And closure isn't about changing the past.
No, you can't change what happened. Closure, in this sense, is about fully acknowledging the truth of what happened and how it felt. Feeling it through, perhaps in a safe way now so it doesn't hold the same charge.
The material mentioned things like writing to your younger self or having imaginary conversations.
Those can be powerful ways to process and integrate past experiences. Finding ways to give voice to the part of you that was hurt or silenced. For Mark, maybe that turning point was simply daring to say, "I'm scared," to his wife, instead of withdrawing. That small act breaks the pattern.
It might not be one big dramatic moment then.
Often it's gradual. Small moments of awareness, small choices to respond differently. But they add up. They free up energy that was tied up in holding on to the past.
And this leads to owning our choices now. Responsibility, but not as blame, more as responsibility.
That's a wonderful way to put it. Responsibility. We're not victims of our history forever. We have the ability to choose our response now. Sarah realizing her anger is hers to understand and transform. Mark recognizing his withdrawal is a choice he can change.
And seeing it that way feels empowering, doesn't it? It's about reclaiming agency.
Absolutely. It shifts you from feeling like a passive recipient of your past to an active co-author of your present and future story.
And when we make these internal shifts, there's a ripple effect, right? It changes our relationships too.
Definitely. As you change your internal landscape, your interactions with others naturally shift. Sarah becoming calmer might help her son feel safer. Mark's vulnerability could invite more closeness with his wife. Relationships are like ecosystems. Individual health contributes to the whole system's balance.
So our personal work isn't just personal, it affects those around us.
It really does. And it's worth remembering, again, that growth isn't linear. There will be setbacks. That's normal. The key is the ongoing commitment to awareness and compassion.
So the invitation here as we wrap up is one of curiosity, shifting perspective on these patterns.
Exactly. Instead of seeing them only as burdens or chains, what if we viewed them as teachers? As threads that, if we follow them with curiosity, can lead us to a much deeper understanding of ourselves.
Untangling them takes patience, self-compassion, a willingness to sit with discomfort sometimes.
It does. But the rewards are immense. Greater self-awareness, richer relationships, maybe a stronger sense of purpose. The human psyche is endlessly fascinating. There's always more to learn, more to uncover about ourselves.
So as we conclude this deep dive, the learner, perhaps just take a moment. What patterns, what echoes resonated with you today? What initial spark of curiosity has been lit?
Oh, remember, this journey of understanding, of potentially shifting these deep patterns, it's ongoing. It unfolds over time. So please be patient and kind to yourself along the way.
Because that power to choose differently, it really does grow with your awareness. Just noticing those moments when the past seems to fold into the present, that noticing creates the space for conscious response.
We hope this exploration has offered some valuable insights, maybe a new lens to look through. What new questions are bubbling up for you now? Because really, this is just the beginning of a deeper understanding.